Hi everyone, it's Erwin here again. Today we are back with another series of the Founders Favors interview. Today we have a special guest calling in all the way from sunny side, Bangkok. He actually runs the fastest growing design agency in China, and they work with a top well-known brands that everyone is familiar with, like PepsiCo, Nestle, and even Shangri La Hotel, the beautiful Shangri La Hotel. So without further ado, I'd like to bring on our special guest, and maybe he can get him to share more about himself and what business he does. So,
Good. My name's Addison James. I've just been asked by Irvin how old I am, so I shall say again that I'm 55. Uh, I'm basically an English guy who spent the first 10 years of his life sort of in advertising in Europe and the States. And then in 2000, I came across to Asia, to Singapore, first of all, where I was running an advertising agency called Beatty Ads, which was um, the agency that created the Singapore Girl, for example. So the sort of very famous advertising agency in Singapore in those days.
the Singapore Airlines, the girl,
Huh?
the Singapore Airlines, like the
Yeah,
cabin, you guys
yeah,
created her.
yeah,
Oh
yeah.
man, that's so famous. Like, oh man, wow, yeah, blew that off, man.
Um, and then I carried on working in advertising in Singapore and China and Thailand for another 10 years. And then in 2010, I started a design company in Singapore and developed that into offices then in London and then New York. And then finally, we opened in Shanghai in 2013. In 2019, I sold it. I had no idea about COVID, but I sold it at the right time.
Perfect, just before.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then COVID hit, and I basically decided to retire. And after 2 years, I felt a real lack of mental and creative stimulation. I lost a lot of that in my life. And I also lost a lot of the joy that I get out of building teams, but also working with a lot of creative people. Sitting at home on my own trying to write a novel was not the same as working with 30 or 40
Wow.
talented creative people. So
Wow.
at the beginning of 2022, I decided to open another design agency. Um, and by that time in my life, my objectives have changed. What was important, what wasn't important to me, and specifically also the type of agency that I wanted to create had changed very much from a lot of my past, my history, as it were. So I went back to China on my own in January 2022. And in February 2022, we opened the 25s. And so now we've been open almost 2 years. And that's where we are. I'm sure we'll talk about my company throughout the course of this blog or vlog or whatever. Yeah, that's basically where I am. Yeah.
Very, very cool. So, this company, 25, it only does, is it design? Like, what exactly
Yeah.
do you guys specialize in? What kind of services do you provide?
Okay. So really, we go from sort of brand strategy down through brand design into brand communications. Now, obviously, those terms mean different things to different people. So I just sort of clarify. So brand strategy would literally be a completely new brand, for example, a product that a client comes to us with. How can you position it in the marketplace? How can you angle the proposition towards consumers? How can you differentiate from the category? So we work on all of that strategic area, the brand strategy. We then go into naming, and then we go into really the design side of things where we visualize that brand. That normally starts with the identity of the logo, and then it goes into packaging design, which is the main area of our work. About 70 to 80% of what we do involves packaging design of some sorts. That itself falls into two areas: structural, three-dimensional package. So developing, the shape of bottles for whiskey brands, for example, and graphic design, 2 design, which is more what you might call the labels, for example. And then from that brand design, we go into brand communications, which is usually key visuals, point of sale, and then into sort of e-commerce, that sort of area. That's pretty much what we do. And as you sort of said, we do it for PepsiCo, Nestle, Procter and Gamble, Mondelez, Shangri La, Shell, Aldi, Oatly, and a few of the big Chinese players. So the big dairy company in China, the big beverage company in China. We work with those guys as well. So that's the kind of thing we do.
Yeah, I'm interested actually. Like, do you guys have a specific like minimum criteria in terms of like the companies you work with? Because like all these brands are super big conglomerates. Do you guys
Mm.
also work with small medium enterprises, or you only serve like multinational
Um,
corporations?
we will work with small and sometimes SMEs. So I would draw a differentiation, especially in China, between small and SMEs, because in China you have hundreds, thousands of brands that are launched by one-man bands. They have no investment, they have
Yeah,
no marketing budgets, but
startups.
yeah, they can afford a product. They can't get it listed in retail stores, but they can sell it on EC. So they launch their brand. So sometimes we'll work with some of those guys, which normally is more of a pure design creative play for us, in the sense of we can really enjoy ourselves. There's no global brand, there's no global rules you have to adhere to. It's white space. So we do work with some of those. If I mentioned them, you wouldn't know the brands. They're all in China. But the reason that we work mainly with big players is that it's a business strategy. Very, very simply, the design business is a project-driven business. So you design something, and then you won't hear from that client for 2 years until they want it redesigned. So you're continually finding new projects to fill the hole as one exits. And that's extremely time consuming. So new business becomes a massive part of the design industry. We had made a decision early on that we didn't want to get involved in that game of continually hunting for business. So there's a variety of things we do for our clients that makes us really sticky to our clients. They can't let us go, as it were. And then by working with big companies that have multiple brands, we just rely on our own clients to do the new business for us. So we want a brand manager on brand A to tell a brand manager on brand B, who we don't know, you should work with the 25s. And when you get that kind of reference from someone they work with, one of their colleagues saying you should check out the 25s, it's a much better way to get in. So we don't do any new business. We just try and over deliver on our service to almost put the client in a position where they're saying, we'd like to recommend you to our colleagues. And that's why we go for the bigger companies, because they have more brands. If you go to a one brand company, they've got no one to tell about the 25s. So you do the project and it stops. And that's why we go for the bigger clients.
No, it makes sense. Yeah, that's quite smart, right? Just leveraging on the database already, because you guys don't have to keep finding.
Yeah.
So tell us more like your backstory. Like, what's your backstory, and how did you even come up with the idea of the 25s? Because it sounds so unique. Like the 25s, like yeah.
Well, I suppose we're all in marketing, and the golden rule of marketing is differentiate. So we definitely wanted something that had a real sort of young feel. So despite my age, the average age in the agency is about 28, 29, years of age. So we wanted something that could kind of match into that in terms of like what our brands, sounded like. But the real backstory is, I suppose, sort of two different elements that kind of came to the same area. The first was a personal one. The second was a business one. So the personal one was, for me, I'd worked in a lot of companies previously in advertising, for the big brands like IPG and WPP and Omnicom, those guys. And I always found the way that the staff was remunerated, or they shared in the profits, it always didn't sit well with me. If you didn't grow that year, you'd never get any profit share or bonus for the staff. And it was like, well, hold on, we're still doing a huge amount of profit and it's going straight to the shareholders. What about the team that just, delivered that? So this time round, whilst previously I had partners in my past businesses, this time round at the start, it was only me. So I made an arbitrary decision that I wanted to have an agency that had the best benefits ever for staff, for the team. And I wasn't interested in the best benefits in design, and I wasn't interested for the best benefits in China. I wanted to do something that was globally leading, because my belief is that, you know, we work in an industry where the currency is talent, and it will continue to be that way. You know, look at tech, where Google and Facebook and all those guys hire thousands of people just to stop that talent working at their competitors. You know,
Yeah.
talent is the now, and it is the future. So I wanted to put together a suite of benefits for our team that no other company in the world, in any industry or any country, could match. So the reason we're called the 25s is we give 25% of our profits every year. We share to our staff. Every staff member, even the lowest person in, even our auntie, our sort of cleaner, gets 25 days annual holiday allowance
Wow, that's
on top of their national
incredible.
holiday. And then any or mother or father who has a baby gets 25 weeks parental leave to spend with their new baby. So 25% of the profits, 25 days holiday, 25 weeks for a mother and father. We are the 25s. So that
Wow.
suited my own desire to do something that, you know, I've opened advertising agencies, I've opened design agencies, you compete in different ways. I wanted to try and do something that was on a different level. And because of my belief about really, there's an old icon in the advertising industry called Bill Bernbach, who was the B of DDB, the advertising agency. And he used to have a phrase which was, a principle isn't a principle until it costs you something. And it's only when it costs you something that you see whether or not you want to adhere to your principle. And so this time round for me, you know, when I look at, you know, actually at the end, although I own 100% of the company in effect, at the end of the day, I don't get even half the profits, you know, nowhere near half the profits. But that makes me feel that I'm doing the sort of right thing. And that's why the team carries on doing such an excellent job. You know, I don't have to do anything. They're just driving it. So the first reason why we were called the 25s was that. That then led into what could we do that could be attractive to clients. And in our industry, as in any communications industry, if you're in advertising, PR, digital, or design, it doesn't really matter. Clients obviously sometimes want to hire an agency's name, like the big agency name, but more often they're actually interested in who they're going to work with. They want to know who they're going to work with. The classic one when you're in a pitch where all this sort of like management team turns up from the agency, and then when we win the business, they just leave, and it's a junior team that runs it, you know. So clients come to agencies to work with the best talent. So what we simply say to them is, we have the best talent in the industry. And when they ask us, how can you prove that? We show them the benefits, and we say it's, you know, it's the most attractive thing. And that's why we get the best talent wanting to join us. So even though we were a startup in February last year, you know, the very first day we opened with the two best client service people and the two best designers in Shanghai. So
the two best designers in Shanghai joined the 25s because of this.
Yeah.
Oh.
So it was a very powerful team at the beginning, you know, bringing in clients because they're attracted to that thing, you know. They want to work with these people. So, you know, so that's why we call the 25s. There was a personal reason, there was a business reason. It attracts clients because we can prove we have great talent. But also from a personal reason, I feel that I'm doing something that lets me sleep easier.
Oh, I like it. Like, it's all about the team. And when you focus on the team, eventually you also benefit, like you said, because now you don't have to worry about managing the business, because the team is now incentivized to drive the business forward, because they feel like they're part owners. It's so
Which they are.
Yeah.
It's a
Wow.
virtuous circle, you know, and you get great talent, then other good talent wants to join because they want to work with people who are really good. Clients want to come and be part of the agency because they want to work, and around it goes, you know. So
yeah, and even in Singapore and US, I don't ever hear companies giving this much of the profits to the team. I've not heard of this before. This is the first time I'm hearing this.
yeah. Well, I think the industry average is something like about 7%, but that's if you grow. So in the years when you haven't, you know, beaten what you did in the previous year, there is no bonus at all. We do it every year, regardless of what we're doing. So
even if it goes down, you still pay them 25%.
Yeah, yeah.
Unheard of. This is unheard of. Well, you are breaking the
Yeah,
industry. Yeah.
there's lots of reasons why a company might be going up and then might go down in terms of its profits, and they're not always connected to the team who are actually delivering the projects. It could be external reasons because of global economic, sort of like downfalls. It
Yeah.
could be because the management teams made bad decisions. you know.
Yes.
So I don't think it's fair to penalise the team who've probably been working their ass off anyhow to deliver great work for something that really should be put at the feet of the CEO of the company. You know,
Understand. And
yeah.
are they also only allowed to work 25 hours a week? I'm just kidding.
No, so I mean, like our salaries are absolutely the same. I mean, basically, if someone leaves the company, they always want more, so that's kind of what we end up, paying. So our salaries aren't any lower. There's no quid pro quo. You're going to get a big bonus, so therefore your salary. It's basically, if you guys work smart and you develop great work, great design work, the agency will do well, and you're sharing that at the end of the year. So we've literally just given out our bonus literally last week because we're
Wow.
estimating the end of December what it will be. So that's gone out, and it was a really nice series of meetings with about 35 people, or 34 because it's not me, to sort of give them that. We put it on a certificate, we had it hand designed, and
Wow.
we gave
Yeah,
them
that's
that
nice.
the amount that they were sort of earning, and they were quite shocked because like some of them are getting like 4 or 5 times their monthly salary.
Ooh.
So it works well. But it's
Yeah.
also great when we go and meet clients because one of the client team will always say when we take them through why we're called the 25s, they'll ask us if there's any vacancies in our company and can they join.
Actually, like people
Yeah,
already want to join,
yeah,
leave.
they do it as a joke, but it's kind of like it's
I don't think
always the
they might
reaction.
mean it. Yeah,
Yeah,
because they
yeah,
love it so much, right?
yeah,
So many benefits.
yeah.
Mm. So tell us more about like how was your life growing up? Did you come from a family background of designers or entrepreneurs or even background with money to begin with?
No, no, we didn't have money. I learned to drive
Mm.
when I was 50 because when all when everyone else
Oh,
was
what?
learning how to drive when they were sort of 17 in England and everything, like for me, no, we didn't have a car. We weren't going to get a car. What was the point, sort of thing. But I'm not actually a designer. I'm actually a brand strategist by background. So when I was in advertising before, I was a brand strategist.
Mm.
But I fell in love from advertising into design. I fell in love with what design is about, and so I'm not actually a designer by background.
Oh.
My father, ironically, he used to design and make
Huh.
one-off pieces of jewelry. So he left England and went to live in a Spanish island and lived in the sun in a pair of shorts and made jewelry for the back end of his life, sort of thing. But we
Oh.
never really had any money. Uh, but we had a really good family, and it was kind of drilled into us from an early age that, you know, there won't be any pocket money, but if you want to make money, then you can go out and sort of work and make money. So from, sort of like 10 years of age, I was, you know, doing jobs, doing work to get money, sort of thing. And
10 years old.
yeah, I used to, so eventually when I was 9 years old, my dad bought a car. Okay. And the first thing he did was teach me and my brother how to clean the car. And every Sunday we had to clean the car. And my dad was a perfectionist. So he used to come out, look at the job that we'd done and say, look, and he'd bend down one of the wheels and he'd look at the sort of, the gaps in the sort of, the hubcap. And he'd say, look, you haven't got in there. And he'd get a toothbrush and he'd show us how to do it. So
Wow.
it had this sort of thing instilled into us about, there's a phrase in English, if a job's worth doing, it's worth doing right, you know. So he taught us that, not always in the most pleasant way, but basically you learn a lesson. So by the age of 10, I could really, really wash a car perfectly. So I got on my bike, and there was about 3 villages around us in England. I used to live in the countryside, and I just cycled around, knocked on the doors, and I got eventually about 5 cars that I would wash every Saturday. for £1 each car. This is, this is
$1.
the end of the 70s, yeah.
Oh,
And that was my first sort of thing. So, and it's interesting to me because, certainly when I look at Gen Z and they're coming into, the office, and, they're kind of like, yeah, I don't know if I want to be here, maybe another industry. There's no pressure, a lot of kids come from wealthy families. They haven't got that drive and determination. And I think definitely for me, actually, that background really, really helped me. It got rid of any lack of confidence talking to strangers, asking them for work, negotiating money, so it kind of taught me a lot, not the best way to do it, but not to be scared of doing it. So I think, in the business I'm in and the business I've been in, basically all communication agencies are about new business. It's all about trying to get the clients in. So, I kind of learned that at an early age, I suppose,
being self-reliant, being good at
Yeah,
communicating with people.
yeah, that drive, and then when I left university, I went to work in my first advertising agency, and after 2 years, I got fired. Basically,
Why?
I was a lazy bastard. I liked working in offices. I was smoking a lot of marijuana in those days. So
Not in Singapore,
the
I guess.
whole,
Then it's not in
the whole
Singapore.
work,
Yeah.
yeah. So the whole work thing, eventually it was weird. Right through my teens and everything, I'd worked really hard. Right through university, I worked in a bar to go through university and everything. But then when I finally came to work, I just didn't want to do it. So at 23, I left and I started to bartend around the world. I went to the States, to Boston, I went to New Zealand, I went to France, and obviously back to England. And for about 3 years, I kind of bartended.
Bartending.
Yeah, yeah.
How
But
how does that work? Like over different countries.
I just used to work illegally in different countries. Cash bartender. So I'd work in a
Oh.
bar in England for like 6 months, and I'd fly to Boston and find another job and that kind of thing. But it's
Hmm.
interesting because it was another sort of. I'm absolutely certain for me in my background it was a learning curve for me because especially in the States, but when you're working in a bar, you're not getting paid anything. It's your tips, you know. So how do you earn tips? And the best way to earn tips is to understand who you're selling a drink to, make them happy, they'll give you a bigger tip. So you become very, very good when, a couple or a couple of guys are walking towards you. In that 5 seconds as they're walking towards you in the bar, you're checking out their clothing, you're checking out their watch, you're checking out their shoes, who are they with, da, da, da. So when they get there, you're going to try and sell it. You're going to upsell them a drink and everything. Then you're talking to them at the bar. Basically your job is to try and get the size of the bar bill up. So they're paying tips, you know. So what you learn doing that in the sort of 3 or 4 years that I did that is how to talk to people, you know. And so again, when I got back into advertising when I was about 27, and no real experience at all that I brought with me because I was, been working in bars. But I found
How long did that last? Working in these bars, traveling.
about 3.5, nearly 4 years.
Wow. I guess you wanted to travel also. It was like a travel
Yeah,
nomad, digital nomad,
yeah,
travel nomad.
yeah, yeah. I didn't know I'd wanted to. I didn't really set out with that desire. But you'll be working with someone like you'd be working. I was working in Boston, and there was an Australian guy working there. And I was like to him, what's it like working in Australia? He said, you don't want to work in Australia, you want to work in New Zealand. So about 6 months later, I found myself in Auckland and I was working in a bar in Auckland, you know. So, I was free. I was
Oh.
young, I didn't have any responsibilities. I didn't have a girlfriend. I didn't have kids. So it was, from that sense, really, what I earned, was for me sort of thing. So, but it was just fun. But it was a really good learning curve. Definitely in retrospect, I look back at it, you really hone your ability to be able to see someone and judge someone really quickly.
Yeah, that's a very transferable skill in business as well, right? Looking
Yeah,
at clients,
yeah,
hiring,
yeah.
you
All
never
of that,
know.
all of those things.
Yeah.
Yeah, all of those things. Yeah, I'm doing it to you right now.
Oh, intense. I should have dressed up better. Ooh, soon. That's why I have the bookcase.
Yeah. Wow, you must be smart.
I want you to think that. Okay, yeah, that's so interesting. Like, not many people can share. They go around the world doing different bars. This is the first time I ever
Mm,
heard such a unique story. So,
yeah.
so cool.
Yeah.
Um, what was your most unique experience, I guess, or what was was there any kind of incident you could recall out of those 3 years traveling the world while doing all these different bartending? Was there like any unique experience that taught you something other than judging people? Maybe something happened. Because I'm sure a lot of things must have happened during those years, meeting so many people, different countries.
I mean, God, so many experiences. One of the funny ones was, so in the bar industry, quite a lot of people who work in it, it's a cash business. There's quite a lot of people who are sort of uh, taking money, serving drinks.
Ah, they steal the money.
And I went to work in Los Angeles um, for 2 weeks. So the bar I was working in Boston sent me to Los Angeles for 2 weeks because they just wanted to have someone with an English accent because of this whatever. And while I was there was a guy who came in every night at about 6 p.m. and stayed until about midnight, just sat at the end of the bar, never really talking to anyone, really weird. And I didn't know any of the guys that were working at the bar because I'd just come over and all the rest of it. So I was very separate to the whole thing, but I was just working on a bar and I was down at his end where he was sitting. My till was down there. I was serving him. And uh, after about, I think it was about 10 days or something, I came in for my shift and four of the bartenders, including the bar manager, he's still there, yeah. Four of the bartenders, including the bar manager, had all been fired. And
Whoa.
what's happened sort of thing.
Yeah.
And the guy who was at the end of the bar started talking to me, and he was one of these sort of private detectives who'd been sent in by the owner of the bar to try and work out why the profits were down. And
Whoa.
the owner assumed that the bartenders were taking money. And apparently, what had happened was this private detective had spent a week sitting, at the end of the bar. And then when he'd gone to see the owner, this is what he told me. When he'd gone to see the owner, he'd said to the owner, "Look, I'm very experienced. I've seen this sort of thing all the time. I can't work out what's happening. Every single dollar that those bartenders take, they're putting in those 5 tills." And the owner said to him, "But I've only got 4 tills."
Oh my God.
What had happened
Oh
was the
my
bar
God.
manager had just put his own till there.
He put his
And
own.
yeah, and they basically
Wow.
used to put their money in. So yeah, I don't know if it ever taught me anything. I mean, I suppose in some ways it taught me about sort of trust. And that obviously becomes a really big part of what you're doing. But it's very difficult in the kind of business that I work in. You don't have to trust anything because the money takes care of itself. But you have to trust a finance manager, for example.
Yeah.
Maybe they just hire a couple of staff that don't exist and someone's getting paid salary. So you always keep an eye on things, sort of thing. But yeah, that's I don't know. That's one of many funny stories that kind of happened to me as I was going around. But it was a great period of my life. It really was, because you meet so many transient people in that industry. No one's really working in a bar for the next 20 years, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of, foreigners who are working, who are traveling through, working for 6 months, a year. So you meet a real smorgasbord of people, like a real mishmash of people. And also, quite a lot of them are bartending so they can do something else. So, for example, in LA, they're all trying to be actors or screenwriters, but as you go round, everyone's got something that they're doing on the side that's their main thing. So you get to meet a lot of people who are very passionate about something else apart from what they're working in.
Yeah.
Whereas, I found, like, the communications industry, most people are most passionate about the thing that that they're working. Really passionate about advertising, really passionate about design. So it was very interesting, sort of part of my life from that perspective.
Yeah.
It was fun. It's fun.
Interesting. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. The part about the guy putting his own tail, that blows my mind. He's like, yeah, let me just put my own bank. Owner doesn't mind. Genius.
Smart,
Yeah.
real smart.
Um, moving back to the business, right? Let's talk
Yeah.
about the 25s, right? How did you guys launch the offer, right? When you guys first started, you said you set up the business in 2022 when you came back to China. And I guess back then you were not working in another job or business, like this was
No.
after you mentioned retirement, right? You wanted to come
Yeah.
back. Okay.
Yeah.
So how did you guys launch the offer? Because China is also like a new. I heard that China is a very closed off country. Like as a foreigner as well, like they are very closed off.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how do
Yeah.
you guys like launch and how do you even get your first ever client?
Well, part of it is because the last office that I launched for my previous agency was in Shanghai, and I
Hmm.
Shanghai from 2013 to 2019. So I knew a lot of talented people, but I also knew a lot of clients. And 2 years later, as it were, after I left at the end of 2019, 2020, 2021, I spent in England in COVID and everything. So when I went back, I was, starting to contact clients that I knew and saying, I'm going to be launching another agency. It's going to be even better than the last one, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This is what we're going to be about, but so much of it is about personal relationships. So,
Relationships.
like quite a lot of sort of Asia Pacific, being a foreigner can be a disadvantage, but it can also be an advantage. You know, I think quite wrongly there's a belief that Westerners or Europeans can know a lot of great experience. In my experience in Asia Pacific, that's not true. Most of them are fucking shit at what they're doing, to be honest.
Oh,
But so but I had a lot of the connections that we needed. So when I started to talk to some of those senior clients about the fact that I was opening a new agency that was differentiated, this is what the offer is, et cetera, they were interested to sort of talk. So in January, I had several conversations, and then we pretty much opened the agency with one client, which was Shangri La Hotels. And then within the space of about a month, we started to sort of pull in some of the bigger clients like Mondelez, and then one of the big beverage companies in China called Kongshifu. So that's kind of how we did it. And then sort of unfortunately then in China, they had lockdown, kind of serious.
yeah, it was quite bad. I saw the news.
Yeah. So from April, sort of the beginning of April, really, for 3 months, we went into lockdown. So we started on February 14th, Valentine's Day. And 6 weeks later, we were all in lockdown. So we all had to, work by remote straight away, which was kind of difficult for a young team, that was working together.
Yeah.
And also, I gambled on renting a proper office rather than going into a WeWork or something like that, which I know is a typical way to do it, and it's much less risky, and you can scale it up and all of that stuff. But to me, part of being an agency is this is our space, we own it. This is where the gang hangs out, kind of thing. To try and build
Family team bonding.
yeah, yeah. Try
Family.
and produce culture when you're in one of those offices that, oh, we just hired someone, we've got to move to another one, and you're moving, Anyway, we rented this office, but the reality was that by the time we came out of lockdown in June or in July, we'd grown too big. We'd hired so many people during that period that we couldn't fit into the office, so we had
Oh
to
no.
move into it. So we hardly had any time in our first office at all, So
Oh.
yeah, then we went.
Yeah.
So literally last week we moved into our third office. So sort of end of year two, as it were, of the agency. We've just literally moved into another office because we've expanded again. So we just moved into another bigger place. So it was a real baptism of fire, 2022, to be opening a company in China. So it didn't. worry me or faze me at all because I'd sort of done it before. Like when I opened the agency, previous agency in 2013, I was opening it from scratch. I'd learned a lot of lessons, etc., etc., etc. But this time around in 2022, I was definitely an entrepreneur. I was on my own. I had no partners, etc., etc. And then COVID happened, and it was just this series of nightmares. We couldn't invoice any clients during that period because all the invoicing in China then was done on a machine to produce paper invoices. There was no such thing as electronic invoices in 2022. So some clients did, but most clients do. And that's the machine that produces those. And that machine was in our accountant's firm, and that was in lockdown. So they couldn't go to their office. So for the first 3 months, we couldn't invoice any clients. So you're an entrepreneur, I'm an entrepreneur. We all know about cash flow. I'm sitting there thinking,
no cash. Then how does that work? How do I pay the staff? Can't invoice, can't pay.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's tough.
So and then even like I was saying, okay, look, what I'll do is I'll just transfer more money from the UK into the company in China. But the problem was that when the money comes into the bank, because they were all in lockdown, they wouldn't officially recognize the money as happened. So it wasn't in my account in the UK, it was in the company's bank account in Shanghai, but the bank wouldn't recognize it. So we couldn't leverage that money that had been pushed into the business. So, if we'd gone 2 more months in lockdown, we probably would have closed. Just because, we had no problem getting the business. We had no problem getting the staff. We just couldn't invoice the clients. And we couldn't get cash invested into the company.
But wouldn't that be the same issue for all of your competitors at the time? Everybody would probably face the same issue.
Probably, but I don't care about the competitors.
Yeah. I'm just thinking it just sounds so stupid that the government would do that, or like how the whole industry can't. It's kind of crazy, right? Like the customers want to pay you, but they can't.
Yeah. But most of our competitors have been set up. They've been going for a long time. They probably had cash reserves. It was a sort of there's real pros and cons like there is to any country in the world in terms of setting up business. So China's incredibly advanced in many other ways, like really far advanced past the West, past Japan, past Singapore, and in other areas, not so much. So it's kind of swings and roundabouts. You benefit from some of it, and the other side's problematical,
Actually, I'm really curious. What made you initially wanted to open a business or office in China? Coming from the West, coming from US, UK, or even Singapore, like China is a completely different playing field, right? Because like they're all mainland Chinese, and even in the Singapore context, the China's Chinese is, we always say this, very powerful. the way they speak, it's not the same, even for us. We don't see it the same. So what made you want to go into China? Was it because the market is so big, or like what made you want to go there?
Yeah, there's 2 things really. Is the size of opportunity, as you referred to. It's a massive nation, and
$1 billion nation.
Yeah, if I'm doing my business in Singapore and I talk to F&N Beverages about 100 plus, they can only sell so many cans a year to the Singaporean population of 5 million people. Therefore, the revenues for that brand are X. Therefore, their budgets for marketing and design are very small. You go to China, they can sell, so their revenue streams are higher. So they can afford the type of budgets that I want to charge for. Yeah. Plus, there's a lot of brands, et cetera, et cetera. Plus, there's a lot of innovation in that country, more than there is in any country in the world. So it's a perfect environment in terms of the revenue opportunity. The second thing is the size of the competitive threat. And quite a lot of what I would consider to be my competitors, the international networks in the design world, companies that have got headquartered in New York or London or Paris, a lot of them won't open in China because they're worried about certain things, doing business in China, the geopolitical situation, et cetera, et cetera. So actually in Singapore, there's about 10 competitors for me, international design networks. In China, there's about 4.
Much
so there's
less
competition and more opportunity. So those 2 things together, And I'd done sort of 6 years in China, so I kind of knew how it worked. So I wasn't too worried. You know, I didn't see it as a foreign country. It was somewhere where I'd made mistakes before and learned by those mistakes and honed and crafted a business idea and a business model that I knew would work for that place, you know. So, yeah.
I guess the bet really paid off back then when you first came in.
The what? Sorry, say
The
again.
bet, like the bet that you took to come into China in 2030 really paid off because now it made it so much easier the second time.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, absolutely, yeah. You know, and then a lot of, you know, I've kind of listed a few things that went against us, you know, like the lockdown and the
Yeah,
banking
the
rate.
lockdown.
But then there were also things that then went for us. You know, one or two of our competitors actually closed during 2022 because they just couldn't develop the business, so they closed their offices. So the amount of competitors shrunk. Most of the other competitors downsized during that period. You know, so it was quite fertile territory. You know, that I hadn't foreseen at all. You know.
Understand. So, since you launched this company, right, what have you guys found that helped you guys to actually like attract and also retain the clients that you work with?
Yeah. Okay. So this is probably the interesting part of the interview because there are definitely certain things that
Hmm.
we do as a design agency that none of our competitors do, and in a way, the design industry, it's a bit like the advertising industry. It sort of hasn't changed for 100 years. So I'll give you one example of it. In the design industry, the sort of common belief is that it takes about 4 weeks to develop the packaging design to then go back to the client with your solution. 4 weeks. Yeah. In China, you have brands that don't want to work 1 week. They don't want to wait more than 1 week. So you have to
Yeah.
develop ways of working where they want the same quality of creativity, but they want it in a quarter of the time.
Yeah.
So we developed over a course of time some systems, some processes, and some of it's attitudinal. It's literally just changing your attitude to what can be done. You know, I love that expression in Singapore, can, you know, and
And,
that's one of our Singlish phrases that we use in Shanghai. You know, the answer is can. What's the question? You know, so
wow.
we've developed a lot of systems and processes which would take too much time to sort of explain, but also I don't really want them to be public knowledge because I don't want my competitors looking at it. They'd find it very difficult to replicate, but over time they probably could do. So I don't want them to do that. But suffice to say that basically what we do is we, you know, to our clients really, is we offer international quality, but in a way that fits working in China. And that's one of the unique things we do. Most of my competitors, international agencies, will say, this is how we do it in London, this is how we do it in New York, this is how we do it in Paris, this is how we're doing it here, this is how we get great quality work. And the clients are, you know, so quite a lot of the time the clients will come to us just because we're faster with the same quality. And that's one of the main areas that
Sweet.
yeah, yeah. The other is that it's a very personal business. You know, I mentioned earlier about some of the connections that I had and everything, but that actually works at every level in the agency. So even one of the junior sort of account executives or account managers or account directors who've had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years experience, they will know and have relationships with clients. And so those clients will contact. I mean, most business is done on WeChat. It's not done on email. Yeah.
Oh
So they're,
yeah, WeChat is the super
yeah,
app of China.
yeah, it's an
Yeah.
amazing story, but certainly for business, it's extremely useful. But what happens is, you know, someone will be working in agency A and they'll leave agency A and they'll join another agency. The client just follows them. They've got their contact and they'll call them, and you know, the person will say, oh, look, I don't work in that agency anymore. And they'll say, don't worry about that. We want to work with you. So whichever agency they're at, they'll work with them. So if we've got the best people in the
All the
25,
clients will go to you guys.
that's one of the
The
ways that
WeChat,
we
they follow the WeChat.
So,
Oh.
you know, in the early days, it wasn't just me bringing in business. It was a lot of the team that was working. You know, they were bringing in clients as well, clients who still wanted to work with them or work with the designers, you know. So, and then
People's
it just like,
business.
yeah, it just snowballed from there, you know, sort of really organic growth in that way.
And do
Yeah.
you guys run things like paid advertising, or it's really has been built through the word of mouth and building a great team. And when you have a great team, you have clients that come.
We don't do any marketing at all whatsoever. We don't even have a WeChat page, which everyone does. We have a website because when I opened the agency in February 2022, I wanted to have a website because I knew that some of my clients would be international brands, and so maybe some of the teams in the West would be looking at it. So we had a website. We haven't changed that website at all since the day it was opened, and there's not much. It just says the ethos about the company and
Oh
basically,
man.
yeah. So honestly, in my business, you can do all that, and I've done it in the past. We've had new business people who work for us. We've done mail shots. I understand some of the things that you're involved in as well. It doesn't work for us in the way that we want to work it in terms of the returns on it. A lot of my competitors use it, and a lot of the industry uses it. It does work for them,
Yeah.
but for us,
Direct mail, road shows, trade shows, these kind of things.
don't go to any of them. No.
Oh.
I mean, to be honest with you, we're at a situation now at 35 people where we've got word of mouth going because now we've been there for 2 years, so clients know about us, and also 2 years is for a brand manager on a brand team in a client, the average time where they'll jump to another company. So they'll go to another company and they'll contact us and say, hey, yeah, I used to work with you at Nestle, but now I'm at Colgate, and would you guys like to come in and look at what we can do for Colgate? So quite a lot of that's starting to happen. And what we have found now, just literally in the last 6 months, is that actually what's preventing our growth is not revenue streams that we could take advantage of. It's literally the amount of people we can have to service it. So I could go out tomorrow and hire 10 extra people, and we could definitely use them for other revenue that we've had to say no to. But if I hire those 10 people, they're not of the same quality of the 35 people I've got. I've just diluted, I've lowered the level of quality of the agency. The agency is not so talented. And eventually what will happen is that will affect the quality of the work or the speed of the work. And eventually we will lose clients because of it. So what we need to do is grow by how many, hyper talented people we can hire rather than how many clients we can find.
Interesting. Yeah, it's so it seems like the talent is actually the bottleneck. It's not finding more clients. It's actually making sure you have enough people to do great work.
Yeah. It's the tagline for our agency. It's all about the talent.
It's all about I like it. It's all about talent.
It is
all about the talent. And that's why you have the 25. Like now it makes sense. It really fits that value proposition. Then have you guys considered, since you guys are so experienced, you have the best designers, why not? I don't know, I'm just like thinking like why not create like an academy where you can train up these designers in-house and then move them over when they're better. Since you have the best talent, they could easily be a mentor to all these people.
Yeah. So in a way that gets done anyhow, but it gets done on the job in the agency. And let me kind of explain a bit about that. So for example, anyone who comes to us and we talk about their background, let's say, for example, it might be a fresh person out of university, what degree did you, oh, I did marketing communications, and I found this in advertising, the same in design, what they learn in there is very different from what happens in the real world, So get into that sort of, educating the theory of what you do.
The theory.
It's not a replacement for actually when you're in the crucible, the fire, and you've got deadlines, clients being difficult, and this and that, and all these things going on. It's if you can deliver quality design in that environment rather than in the classroom. So what happens is, because we do work in these different ways, everyone who comes into our agency has to be trained up to our way. And in some ways, I wish it was not the case, because it's a real pain in the ass, because it can take at least 3 months. You might get someone who's got 5 years experience in design. When they come into our thing, they have to kind of almost break what they know and then remold it to go our way, so it takes some time to do that. So that's where we do, in effect, the academy, in the sense of that's where they get trained, but they get trained on real projects. So every designer who comes into our office, it doesn't even matter if they're senior experienced. If they've never worked in the 25s, they've never worked as fast ever anywhere. So they have to learn to do that. So when they come in, the first thing they do is panic because they see what all the other designers are doing and they think, shit, I'm never going to be able to do that. But the truth of the matter is they can do. They just have to change their attitude, learn some of the ways that we do things, and within a few months, they're part of the team. So we do it there. We do it there. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. Yeah. In-house academy on the job, right? Training on the job.
Yeah. And I think also, like, what we do is hard. It's harder to do what we do than other design agencies are doing. You have to do the same quality at 4 times as fast. That's difficult. Yeah. So it's hard. It's hard work. It's not about not long hours. It's just you have to be really productive when you're working during the day. So if we teach a load of people how to do that and they're not actually part of the 25s, what they'll get is they'll get the way to do it, but they won't actually get any of the culture of the 25s. And there's a very good chance they might just decide to leave the academy and go to one of our competitors. What I don't want is anyone knowing how we do what we do and leaving us. So our staff retention rate, 0.
What?
Yeah.
0?
Yeah.
No one has left. Not
No
even one. Wow.
Okay, we're only 2 years old, but it's a good sort of indication of they get into it, and obviously there's good benefits and good reasons for them to be there, but once they get into it, it really is like being in a gang.
25 gang. You have your own t-shirt or something. Like you're like you have that tight knit family.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. Very tight.
Could you share with us, like, over the 2 years of running the 25s, what was like the toughest challenge you ever faced, and how did you guys overcome that?
Cash flow.
During the lockdown, right?
Yeah.
When you couldn't invoice, that was the hardest part.
If I go through I talk about buckets, so, in some bucket, you've got a finance bucket, you've got a staff bucket, you've got a client bucket, and there's only about 5 or 6 of them, and so when I used to run the agency, daily, I would, in my mind, look at each of those buckets and feel where the problem was, which bucket is rattling, and I would say that, we've had 1 or 2 occasions where we just couldn't find the right staff. So we had to flatline the growth and wait 3 months, and then, go again. So we've had some of those issues. We've never really had a revenue problem in terms of sort of, having enough revenue. We've been in profit since the 3rd month, and every month we've been in profit, so we've never had any of those sort of problems. But during that lockdown, when we had investment money, my money, and we had it ready to go into the company, but because of the lockdown situation, as I pointed to earlier on, we couldn't get it. And you're an entrepreneur, I'm an entrepreneur. This whole thing is for entrepreneurs. We all know that actually, when you're working for someone's company, these are the problems. It's difficult. I got stressed. When you become an entrepreneur, there's no such stress like it as the cash flow.
Oxygen, right? The oxygen. You need the oxygen to pay the people. People are scared.
And nothing else can be wrong with the company. The rest of the company can be fantastic. It could be going great guns, but if you've got that problem. And from day one, we worked out that we had cash for 12 months. Because I was basically projecting growth like that. And then what started to happen was our growth went like that. So we had to hire to that. So our costs went like that. So 12 months cash flow became 6. And so by July, February, March, April, May, June, July, by July, that cash was burnt.
Yeah.
And it was lucky that lockdown finished, and it was lucky, therefore, I could get the money into the bank and we could use it. Because we had to wait about 3 months before we billed in July and we got paid 3 months later. Some of our clients are on 60, 90, 120-day payment terms, so So yeah, that was like what I would call stressful. And sort of trying to deal with it, locked up in a room in lockdown in China. You're not allowed out of your room.
Man, yeah, you can't leave your room. Oh my God, so stressful. It's literally like a prison.
Yeah,
Oh
just
man.
kind of like,
Yeah.
suppose you call it a perfect storm, So anyway, and I ran out
Nice.
of wine as well because you couldn't get any foods or wine. So I ran out
Oh,
of. I couldn't even get drunk to sort of
oh
anesthetize.
man. Never get drunk. Oh, that's the worst, man. But I guess look, on hindsight, that projection that you said, make sure you always have 12 months of cash. I think that was really what helped you guys overcome that. At least having that foresight to know
Yeah,
that something like this would eventually happen.
yeah.
Mm.
I met an entrepreneur in California about 20 years ago, and I remember him saying to me, because at that time, so I was sort of like in my early 30s, and I was thinking of doing my own advertising agency, and I was just talking to him about his experience and what he learned, and he said to me, "How much money do you think you'll need, like cash flow?" And so I said, X, and he said, "Okay, here's the only advice I would give you: triple it."
Triple it.
Yeah, you will always need three times the amount of cash that. So I like now, I kept all my financial projections, I kept all my plans and everything. I still got them. I love looking back at them. It's just like, my God, the moment I finished writing them, they were out of date, because it's pointless. It's so difficult to project, certainly in my industry, where you're going to go. So, there's two types of problems, isn't there? There's lack of growth or there's overgrowth, and both of
Mm.
cause issues for a company.
Yes. It's
I'd
hard to
much rather
predict.
be over,
Yes.
yeah, but and so we suffered as it were from overgrowth. We grew faster than we
Such a
thought.
thing suffer from overgrowth. From growing
Yeah,
too
but,
fast.
but it's true though, isn't it?
Yeah, it's
Because
true. Yes.
it
Because your
comes
costs
back
go
to
up.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, so that was one of the main points. Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
difficult.
Very, very interesting.
Yeah.
And how would you say you guys, now lockdown is over, we got through the storm, right? So how would you say you guys are doing today? And walk us through how does the future look like for the 25 in 5 to 10 years?
Okay. Um, so right now, I'm so proud of the team. Like so proud of the team. We took on another big client in September that almost doubled our revenue overnight.
One
And
client.
yeah, and we had to hire.
Wow.
Well, it was a
Massive
supermarket.
wheel.
It was a supermarket chain. Yeah. So if you think about a supermarket, they want packaging design. How many different packs have they got on their shelves?
Oh,
So,
thousands.
yeah. So all their private label, own label. I'm not talking about all the brands that they sell. So this was Aldi, the German supermarket chain. So we had to do something like 1,000 pieces of pack design in 2 months. So it was just crazy. So the revenue almost doubled overnight. The size of the team, we had to sort of bring in freelancers. All these kind of things, and they have done an amazing job. The client's extremely happy with what we're doing. They're now taking us to their colleagues in different parts of the world and talking about this agency in China that might be able to service them. So the business is going very well that way, but the team is just fantastic. They've just gone into the new office last week. It's really cool. It's really designed, really, really cool. Some people says it looks a bit like an S&M dungeon, but I think it looks really cool. I didn't design.
Why SM budget? Why?
No, it's like they asked me for a budget, a certain amount of money for the renovation of the space that we took. I signed that off, and then I just said, do whatever you want to do. So they have designed the office that they,
The team.
that
The
they,
team all has a
yeah,
say in it.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
that's the best.
So,
Yeah.
so it's really cool that way. Like I went there, December 12th. That was the day we moved in. That was the first day I saw it, was December 12th. And I was as surprised as quite a lot of the people. So the team's doing really well. The business is going very, very well. We have, some sort of short-term objectives that are mainly about leveraging the reputation that we've built, milking that reputation, but also with kind of consistency and stability. So we don't change the business model that we've had or the business plan that we've had. We keep going in the same way. In terms of sort of plans over the next 5-10 years, there was always a principle written into the business plan from the beginning, which was that we would never exceed 50 people, because when you get over that amount, the culture starts to dissipate and dilute. And it's so culture driven, the agency, to be able to work in that agency and deliver like we do, the culture has to be strong, to keep that team together.
Like a football team.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it is. We talk about that analogy all the time. And, from our perspective, of course, if we got bigger, we could earn more money. If we open other offices in different parts of the world, we could earn more money. But what we want to do is keep the agency at that sort of size. So there'll be a cap in terms of the amount of people. There'll be a cap in terms of the amount of revenue, the amount of clients. There'll be a cap in terms of the amounts of profits. And so, everyone sort of buys into that, because if you grow that team too much, what happens is you go from being an agency to becoming a business. And they're two very different things. An agency is somewhere you want to belong. A business makes money. One has a soul, one doesn't have a soul. I'm not trying to get spiritual about the whole thing, but some companies that doesn't matter to. If you go and work in a bank, great. No soul. Making money.
No soul.
But
ouch.
but for
True,
the kind of that we're doing, it's very, very important. There's a personality to it. There's a cult to it. It's that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that's the plan. We will definitely never open another office anywhere in the world. Done all that before. Networks don't like doing it. So this is a pleasure project as well as a profit project. For me and for the people that are working alongside me. The other co-founder, Angela C. So, for us, it's like we want to keep what we're steering towards, and that will get to a limit. And then there will be a succession at some point. I've really pulled back quite a lot in the last, 6 months. Maybe in 5 years, Angela C., who's my co-founding partner, she'll pull back as well. And then there will be a succession of people to come up and then run the company as well. So hopefully we'll keep going at that, but I don't know. Talk to me in 5 years.
Oh, definitely. 5 year, let's go. 5-year projection.
Yeah. Who knows? Honestly, I mean, who knows? Who knows?
But
What will
interesting how I think you're the first entrepreneur I interviewed that actually says they don't plan to grow beyond a certain point, like to actually cap at 50 because the culture is more important. That's so interesting, and how you even got everybody in the team to buy into that. Because I thought some people will naturally every team there's naturally that person that is always ambitious and is always wanting to grow and grow and grow. So it's interesting how everybody's on the same page, because that's very important as well.
I mean, they don't earn any more salary if we're bigger, and they don't earn really any more bonus, because if there's more bonus because we're bigger, there's more people. So when you divide it out, you get to a similar, we're going to plateau at a certain, I won't go what it is, but our profit margins are, very healthy for our industry. They're not going to get any higher percentage of profit margin. It's impossible. You would kill the machine if you did it that way. You can run hot for 1 or 2 months, but not much longer. So growing bigger for everyone in the team doesn't have any financial upside.
And you might even get more stress as well.
Almost certainly would do. But what would definitely happen is you wouldn't be so close knit.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Team,
fragmented.
One of the, again, I've said I'm not going to go into in too much details, but one of the ways that we deliver quality and speed is the way that we resource our projects. Which designers will work on which projects. Most of our competitors do that at the beginning of the month. They make a plan for the month. We do it every day. Every day. 6 p.m. every day, we do resourcing. And that resourcing relies on the fact that every project manager knows what every designer's like and how good they would be at certain types of jobs. Don't put this guy on this one, put him on this one. We want this girl on this kind of project because she's good for that. So to do that, all the project managers need to know all the designers. You get too many designers, your company gets big, they don't know that. It starts to sort of make that resourcing much less efficient. Once it becomes less efficient, the company starts to crumble. So, yeah, there's pragmatic reasons why we shouldn't grow as well. But initially, it was sort of, we would prefer to retain ourselves as an agency rather than a business.
Understand. Yeah, and since it's a service-based business, heavily rely on talent. Naturally, the model itself is also not to say optimized to keep scaling even like a, for example, compared to like a soda or even a software company.
Yeah,
It makes a lot of practical sense.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
through starting this business, is there anything else you have learned in particular that it's you like looking back you find it's very, very helpful or advantageous?
Yeah, I've learned two massive things,
Oh,
which
what are they?
I never even thought there was something that I needed to learn. I had no idea. The first is taking my hands off the business and not micromanaging. So through sort of 30 years of running companies, I've always micromanaged. I always thought it was the best way. This is how we will train people because I'll be working in the trenches with them, you know, all those kind of things. And I realized very quickly in the first 3 months that the people that I brought in who used to work for me like 3 years previously, they'd grown up massively and they could actually do it themselves. So micromanaging was not only unnecessary because they could deliver the quality, but it was also sort of putting a ceiling on them, a glass ceiling on them. They weren't enjoying it. They wanted autonomy. So I had to learn not to micromanage. So basically I had to unlearn something I'd done for 30 years and
Oh,
change it.
that's not
And
easy.
yeah, that's most of this year has been spent doing that. The other one is I used to get stressed out and lose my temper sometimes in the old days, my old companies. And I've learned not to do that as well now. I've learned that there's other ways to, you know, motivate people as a leader, you know. So those two things, they're kind of massive. I almost am embarrassed to sort of say them because it's kind of a bit shameful to admit that, I used to be like this, I used to be that. But it's the truth. It's the truth of the matter. I've been lucky to have successful companies that I've launched or run over the last 20 years since I moved from working into sort of management in 2000. But this one, I think, is the one that's really, really got it right. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think over time, as you start to do more and more companies, you get better over time. It's also like it's like a stepping stone. You have to go through that as well to
Yeah,
learn. Yeah.
absolutely.
And just now you mentioned you said you learned better ways in terms of like managing stuff. I'm really curious, what are some examples of those that you have learned that is better?
Well, I was saying specifically, so for example, in the old days, like my past companies, if we got like really, really busy, it was really, really stressed. You know what it's like when you're running a company. No one ever walks into your office and goes, "Hey, I've got a solution for you." People come into your office with a problem. That's your job.
Yeah, that's true. See, the CEO's job. Yeah,
Yeah,
solve
exactly.
the
So
problem. Yeah.
your day is a series of problems, and at some point, it can, the stress can sort of make you pop, sort of thing. So, in the past, sometimes I'd be like, for Christ's sake, guys, kind of like, ranting about something or whatever, or ranting about a client or whatever. But, a lot of things happen over the course of COVID, those 2 years. I kind of got, my wife is Buddhist. I got heavily into that, I was learning lots of things. And then suddenly when I came into this new company, the 25s, some of that just kind of naturally came with me. It wasn't part of the plan again, it naturally came with me. So it just changed the way that I operated in terms of how I dealt with people that were working with me. As simple as that. I was a lot more sort of, I'm still impatient. They call me green banana because I can't wait for the banana to turn yellow. Still impatient. I want it and I want it now. But I'm much more sort of relaxed in terms of how I sort of like, work with everybody. So yeah, that's my confession, if you like. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, yeah. Thanks for sharing that. And now I have a question that I think everybody wants to know, right? Do you think anyone can become an entrepreneur?
Crikey, that's a really good question. Honestly, no. It's not like I'm trying to say entrepreneurs are better or entrepreneurs have got some, super skills that other, mere mortals, we're not,
Yeah.
not Marvel superheroes. I think that, just as, it's a bit like saying, oh, can anyone become the centre forward for Man City? It's like, well, no, you can work as hard as you want to, but if you haven't got certain things like base talent, raw potential, it's very difficult to move into that. So I think with everything, with every kind of job or every kind of skill or whatever, I think it's very difficult to become good at it unless you've got some of the attributes that allow you to do that. So I'm not saying, becoming an entrepreneur is the greatest thing or the apex of objectives. I'm not saying that at all. But to become an entrepreneur, I think there's a lot of things that you do need, like you need a lot of things in whatever you do. And I think for an entrepreneur, some of them are about smart and some of them are about dumb. For example, you've asked me the question, why would you go to China and open a
Yeah.
business closed off? Or how dumb are you? It's like, yeah, well, there was a lot of blind faith on my part to do it. Now I look back and I'm like, I would never do that again. But when I walked in there in January 2022, I had no doubt at all that I was going to become successful doing it. Not
Wow.
one percentage of doubt. Now I look back on it, I'm like, I was an idiot because there was so many things that could have gone wrong. Some of them I knew, some of them I didn't know. But I must have been dumb to do what I did. So I think to become an entrepreneur, there's maybe dumb is not the nicest way of saying it. Let's call it blind faith
Blind
in
faith.
yourself or in your business idea or your partners or whatever it is, blind faith in that. The other half of it is a set of smarts and skills that are applicable to that industry, and then the other part of it is, for want of a better term, balls.
Gotta evolve.
Yeah, yeah. My sister writes or ghost writes autobiographies for celebrities and stuff like that. And she was writing for one guy who was a chancellor in the UK government, quite a famous guy. And he had a phrase which was hold on to the risk. And she told me this phrase around about lockdown last year when basically there was a lot of risk going on in my business. Couldn't get the cash, And the phrase basically means, if you risk something, then just hang in there and hold on to that risk and see it through. Don't start second guessing and pulling back and all the rest of it. Hold on to that risk, And I think that's the balls that you need sometimes in an entrepreneurial position, because you can look behind you and go, there's no one here. It's me.
Yeah.
If we need money, if we need to find clients, it's me. And that's a very lonely position to be in. I mean, I've done both sides where you have business partners and you have investors, so it's less stressful. This time round was quite, isolatory until my business partner came in, the co-founder, Angela C. And then it was a lot easier, problem shift, problem halved.
Yeah, it's a lonely path, and you really gotta, like when your back is against the wall, it's all only you. Like, I think most people will actually crumble. It's not easy, right? It's
Yeah,
really, definitely not for everyone.
yeah,
But,
yeah.
but for the right person, it pays off big. Big bets lead to big rewards.
For the right idiot, being an
All
entrepreneur,
right.
right thing.
Yeah. So, what are some of the platforms or tools that you guys use for your business? Do you have any tools in case maybe a design agency or someone might want to know?
Well, my designers use, pretty much the typical range of sort of design tools, like, the different softwares and things like that they're sort of using. And again, it's different software for different designers. A 2D designer, a 3D designer, they use different softwares. Everyone's based on Macs because I think really it's just sort of an archaic belief that Macs are better, although I've been shown the PCs are still as good. But we work on that. In terms of sort of platforms, I mean, again, I don't know exactly what you're pointing to, but we all work off Teams. So when we're working from home or working from a remote, everything can be housed there. We have central, finance and project software that everyone again can sort of access. Not every part of it, but all jobs and all progress is housed on there, so it can be sort of like digitally accessed anywhere in the world. So we work with those. I would say it's pretty typical of any design agency. There's nothing really different in terms of the tools and software and platforms that we use. We, like most communication agencies, are looking at AI and what it can and what it can't do. So we're experimenting with that. And actually, I have a sort of side play where I'm a director of AI startup, a communications AI startup. So it's quite interesting to see how that develops as well. So I think we're quite normal on that. I think it's the human element that makes the company different, really. Yes. What they could do with those softwares and platforms.
So in summary, you mentioned Mac, Microsoft Teams, right? Things like Teams, and then after that, a range of AI and design software.
Yeah. Adobe, Rhino, those kind of things,
Gotcha. And what would you say is like the most influential books or podcasts that has helped you on your entrepreneurship journey in the past 30 years?
I think Walter Isaacson's biography of Steve Jobs, not because I see myself as Steve Jobs. I'm not saying that. And definitely he had some nasty traits, but there were some really interesting approaches and ideas and principles that he had as an individual that enabled him to be an incredibly successful entrepreneur. So I think that book is so well written. To me, it's like a page turner. I can sit on a beach and read that book. But the story of how basically Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak got in the garage and how they began that business, and then where it went through even through like Pixar, and how that business grew from the beginning, those kind of things. So I actually prefer, having just referenced that book, I actually prefer reading biographies of entrepreneurs. So like Phil Knight's biography.
Something like yeah.
There's a lot of good lessons in there, even the Everything Store about Amazon. It's not really Jeff Bezos's biography, but it's the biography of Amazon, if you like, and that's quite an interesting story as well. So I actually prefer those kind of approaches to learning about how to be doing business and how to be entrepreneurial, as opposed to 7 tips for who moved
the lean startup, like those kind of business books.
Yeah, I don't. Most of them have been written by people who've never run a business in their life or never been successful in their life. I'm a huge anti-fan of Simon Sinek. I just can't bear this guy who comes out with this.
Simon Sinek.
Most of it, I think, absolute rubbish. It's a guy sitting in a room coming up with what he thinks businessmen should be sort of doing, but it's all theoretical. I don't think half of what he says could actually sort of survive in a real business environment. It's hypothetical, it's it's platitudinous, it's kind of idealistic, but it's not real. So yeah, the kind of business gurus, I don't really sort of get into those kind of things. I have 20 years ago I used to read some of those books, but now I prefer reading about the guys who actually did it and what did they do and what did they come to. Yeah.
How about Gary Vee? What do you think about Gary Vee? Since you're an agency, why Gary Vee?
I do like some of the things he says, but I think that maybe the kind of PR has gone to his head a little bit. But I find it more credible than Simon Sinek. But yeah, I don't know, and then there's different people that I've admired, through the years. Some of them have been personal mentors. Some of them have been people that, I just admired the work they've done. So you find out more about them, that kind of thing. But I find that to be rich, fertile territory as opposed to business books.
Yeah. You get
You
the
know,
real source from the people that have done it. Like
yeah, you get the real problems. The reality.
exactly why I do these interviews because I
Yeah,
really believe
yeah,
exactly what I'm saying. Yeah.
yeah,
The
yeah,
real source, not
yeah,
from a book.
yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
That's true.
And if you could just give one advice, right, for somebody that wants to start his own business one day, maybe it could be a design agency, it could be a restaurant, it could be anything, right? Whether it's in Singapore, China, or any part of Asia, what advice would you give this person?
Okay, so this is quite interesting. So in this second year of our company, the 25s, there's this sort of phrase that has sort of risen, to the top in terms of sort of like a real encapsulation of everything that we've learned over the 2 years, specifically what I've learned. And the phrase goes like this: trust the plan, trust the team, trust the cash flow. And the reason that I've boiled it all down to those three things is, if you've got a really, really good plan, an objective, an idea, a model, of course you will have to end up sort of, manipulating it and, tweaking it and as you go through. But the basic skeleton, the basic framework, if it was good in the beginning, it should normally sort of last because it should have taken into account competitive sets, the competitors. It should have taken into industry problems. It should have taken into account a lot of the things that you should do when you're planning a business. So I didn't wake up one day and go, right, and go and start a design agency. I thought through, a lot of different facets of it. So the plan that we had, without going, back over some of the ground that we've talked about today, is pretty much still the plan that we want. We're still after the same type of client. We're still offering the same competitive advantage. We're still working in a different, differentiated way. So trust the plan is about that. Trust the team is the learning that I had, which was that, basically, don't micromanage. If you hire talented people, get out of the way. Your job is to find talented people. Your job is not to do their job.
Yeah.
So trust the team is about that, and
Trust the
trust the
team.
cash flow is P&Ls and income statements, balance sheets don't mean shit.
Oh, no mean
You've
shit.
either you've either got the cash in the bank or you haven't, and when that burns out, you're in trouble. It doesn't matter what your monthly reports are showing. You've been in profit all year. Just think back to the situation I was saying last year. We were in profit for the first 6 months.
Yeah.
Didn't have a penny in the bank. We had the investment, but we didn't have the cash flow. So trust the plan, trust the team, trust the cash flow. Focus on the cash flow. Don't focus on the P&L.
Focus on the cash. Cash is king.
Yeah, the P&L is the health or how efficiently your business is running. So that would be one area of, if I could humbly say, advice. To me, that encapsulates most of what I think is important about being an entrepreneur. The second thing is a piece of advice I was given years and years and years ago, which really applies to entrepreneurs who are starting businesses or indeed trying to sort of move a business on and grow a business. And it was simply this: a good plan today is better than a great plan tomorrow. Yeah, a good plan today is better than a great plan tomorrow, because you can sit there paralyzed trying to get the plan perfect.
Yeah.
You know what? If you've got a good plan, just get it out there.
Just take
Launch.
action already
Yeah, yeah,
and
launch.
iterate over
Okay.
time.
Yeah, learn. Yeah, yeah. Otherwise, you're sitting in your room just being a theorist. I've got a great idea for a business. I've got a great idea for a restaurant. And
Yeah.
we've all got those, and we've done nothing about them.
Yeah.
Whereas, so yeah, they would be the. I think a good plan today is better than a great plan tomorrow. It works in every occasion. Sometimes when you're doing a piece of work, if you want to get it perfect, well, you might need another 3 weeks. Actually, let's just get it to, let's get it out there, sort of thing. So that would be the advice.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So yeah, we actually come to the end of the